Greetings, glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace to people of good will. In this video, I want to take a very brief look at 3rd Maccabees. However, in this case, I do not mean Greek 3rd Maccabees, which is to say the version of 3rd Maccabees which is found in the Septuagint. Rather, in this video, I want to take a look at a rather different text, that being Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees, also known as Maccabean Salis. And in other words, I'm referring to a Ge'ez version of 3rd Maccabees, which is in the Bible of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Now, this is a bit of a complex topic, as the more well-known versions of the books of Maccabees, at least the first 2 books of Maccabees, also exist in Ge'ez. In other words, there are 2 rather different streams of text called Maccabees or Maccabean. There's the one which parallels the Greek and Latin versions of the 1st and 2nd Maccabees, which is used by Ge'ezite Catholics, and if I'm not mistaken, it's also apparently used by the Eritrean Orthodox Church. And then there's the other text, the other stream of Ge'ez text, which bears the name Maccabees or Maccabean, which is in 3 books and is very different from the mainstream Greek version of Maccabees, and like I said, is used in the Bible of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, or the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And for what it's worth, the version of 1st and 2nd Maccabees, which parallels the mainstream Greek version, appeared in the 1915 Dabasano edition of the Bible in Ge'ez, which is what you see on your screen now. And being that this text was found nowhere online, I took photographs of every single page for 1st and 2nd Maccabees, and then I made them available on Facebook, and I'll share relevant links in the video description. However, in this video, I don't want to look at the version which parallels the Greek text. Rather, instead, I want to look at some of the apparently local text, which is very different from the Greek version. The only place I know of online where the text of Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees can be found is a manuscript listed as UNESCO 2-24, which is available at the website of the Virtual Hill Museum and Manuscript Library over at St. John's University, and I'll share a link in the video description to that as well. This manuscript has Enoch, and it also has the 3 Ethiopic versions of Maccabees. Specifically, 3rd Maccabees starts in the 122nd image of this scan, and it begins at the bottom right-hand corner right here. And that's where the opening verse of 3rd Maccabees begins. And that verse continues on to the next page, or on the other side of that page, which is on the next image of this online scan. And if you put those 2 portions together, you get this, the opening verse of Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees. And if you're interested in how this verse reads, I put together this graphic which contains my own amateur attempt at explaining the text. And, anyone who's interested in looking at it closely can pause the video and look it over at their leisure. However, what I want to zero in on here is the fact that it uses the name Sabellianos as a reference to the devil, as a reference to Satan. Now, that's a variation of the name Sabellius, which referred to a modalist from the early 3rd century. Somehow, some Ethiopian writers used variations of the name Sabellius, who was this hated heresiarch from the past. They used his name or variations of his name as a stand-in reference to Satan. And I just wanted to make note of that because I'm going to circle back to it at the end of this video. But for now, I wanted to turn to the 15th verse of the 1st chapter. In other words, Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees 1:15, which can be found right here. This verse is quoting Satan as recalling when God punished him for refusing to bow down before Adam, for refusing to prostrate to Adam. And it reads as follows. The Lord threw me down from my throne with my saying that I would not prostrate to that which is beneath me. And aside from that verse, I'd like to look at parts of 2 other verses in the next chapter, which is the 2nd chapter. In verse 9, so Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees 2:9, the following is stated regarding Adam. Zafataro amlaku emaret, that his God created him from clay. And then in the next verse, Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees 2:10, the following is said directly to Satan. Amlak zafataraka imnal balbala isat, God which created you from a flame of fire. So to recap what we've looked at here, in the first 2 chapters of Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees, God punished and debased Satan for refusing to prostrate before Adam, and Satan felt that Adam was beneath him. And it's also noted that Adam, that man, the first man, was created from clay, while Satan was created from fire. And this brings us to why I titled this video Ethiopian 3rd Maccabees and the Qur'an, because this parallels something which is found in the 7th chapter of the Qur'an, Surat al-Araf. In the 11th and 12th verses of that chapter, Satan refuses to prostrate before Adam, and when asked why, he declares that he's better than Adam because he was created from fire, while Adam was created from clay. Now, personally, I find this to be very interesting. I find it to be a fascinating parallel. There are lots of parallels between the Qur'an and the Bible, but in this case, if one were to ask if the Quranic story of Satan refusing to prostrate before Adam is found in the Bible, one answer might be it depends on which Bible we're referring to, as it's not found in Protestant Bibles and it's not found in Catholic Bibles, but it is found in the Bible of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And with that in mind, I want to return to something that was mentioned earlier in this video, which is this text referring to Satan by the name Sabellianos. That's a variation of the name Sabellius, as was noted earlier. And as one scholarly source, which I list in the description, as one scholarly source has noted, this trend of referring to Satan by this name actually winds up rendering the name in all sorts of variant forms and variant spellings. And with that in mind, I want to propose a bit of a hypothetical scenario, a bit of a thought experiment, if you will. Here's what I'd like to imagine. What if an Ethiopian text spelled that name in a way which is closer to the Greek and Latin renderings of the name Sabellius? Now, for those who don't know, the Ge'ez script now has the vocalizations built into the characters, but there was an earlier unmodified form of the script which did not have the vocalizations explicit in each character. So what I want to do here is I want to imagine a scenario in which that version of the name, the shorter version of the name, the version of the name which is closer to the Greek and Latin forms, imagine that being written in either the unmodified or unvocalized Ge'ez characters, or even being written in the closely related Musnad script, the South Arabian script, which was used in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula. Now, if we slightly modified that with a change of a single character, that being the first character, from the equivalent of Sin to the equivalent of Aleph, we would arrive at the exact consonantal structure of the Quranic Arabic name Iblis, which is precisely the name Satan is referred to by in that aforementioned 7th chapter of the Qur'an. Now again, this is just a hypothetical scenario, a mere thought experiment, but the point is that when writing in Ge'ez or the Musnad script, the name Sabellius is not that far from the Quranic name Iblis, precisely the name of Satan in these parallel stories. At the very least, that's worth some food for thought. But having said that, I'm going to close this video here. Before I do so, I want to offer up the disclaimer that I did not intend this video as arguing in favor of some sort of necessary charge of direct borrowing between these texts. That is to say, I'm not claiming that the Quran borrowed from Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees. For what it's worth, some claim, perhaps many claim, that Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees was written after the writing of the Qur'an. I personally don't know what the fact of the matter is on that, but even if Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees postdates the Qur'an, that would not mean, conversely, that Ethiopic 3rd Maccabees took this story from the Qur'an. It may simply be a tradition that existed in variant forms in both the Arabian Peninsula and Semitic East Africa, variations of which found their way into both the Qur'an and the Bible of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the Tewahedo Church. Whatever the case, I hope you found this interesting, perhaps even thought-provoking. And so, I welcome any comments, questions, or objections. So feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative. And as always, God bless.